Food waste in the US alone is about 38% of all food that's produced is actually wasted. And this amounts to a few percentage points of our GDP, about $1 trillion in losses every year. The economic opportunity is vast. Imagine if that could be turned into profitable solutions. We would not only minimize waste, but there's a huge opportunity waiting on the other side. Hi, my name is Vayu Hill-Maini. I'm an assistant professor of bioengineering at Stanford University. And my lab is bringing together biotechnology and the world of food to address sustainability challenges in our food system. And I'm really excited about the climate tech map. Before I was a scientist, I was a chef. What drew me in was really the beauty and the emotion around food and cooking. But as I wanted to kind of push further into my culinary creativity and become a better chef, I realized I needed the science. I need to understand what was going on, the biology, the chemistry, physics. And I think now I really come to appreciate that food is both. It is the beauty, the psychology, the emotions that it evokes, but it also is the science that underneath. And if we can kind of bridge those two together, we can create exciting innovations in the food system. And something that I witnessed during my time in the industry was food waste. And as we kind of transform crops into food and we make food products, so much is wasted along the supply chain. As a scientist and a professor at Stanford, I'm hoping to kind of bring science and engineering and connect back to those roots working in the food industry to make it better for people and the planet. We need innovation here because right now we produce plenty of food in theory for all the people on the planet, but so much of it is wasted, and that causes massive climate impacts, and it's also a food security issue. It's a human issue. And we need to find ways to minimize waste and to deal with waste that we have to create a more secure, resilient, and sustainable food system. The global food system accounts for about 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions globally. And what might surprise people is that about half of these emissions, which is about 9 gigatons or so, originate in the loss and waste of food. So a big portion of all global emissions actually come from food waste. There's many issues related to food waste. It could be that things spoil in the field, or pests attack our crops to make them not edible, or things are ugly and they don't sell in the supermarket. But one of the, I think, unappreciated aspects of food waste is that a lot of waste of nutrition happens just in the regular transformation of crops into food. So for example, when you brew beer, you take barley, you mix it in water, and at the end of it you get a beverage that people like. But what happened to all the barley that didn't make it into the beer? That's wasted. That's what's called a byproduct. And the same thing is true everywhere you look. Whether it's olive oil, and 80% of the crop of the olives that you grow are actually just wasted after you press the oil out. I think something that I am really interested in, and I think we need to innovate around, is that as we transform crops into food, we just have a lot of waste. And it's right now put into landfills where it causes methane emissions, but there's nutrients in there, there's flavors in there. And so I think what I'm excited about is how do we see that as a missed opportunity for human nutrition, and find ways to actually tap into all that potential in nutrition and flavor, divert it from the landfill, divert it from waste, and actually turn it back into valuable things for society. So my vision for the future is that we can address the issue of food waste and the need for nutrient-dense, accessible food for people by converting food waste into human food. Imagine you're going to the grocery store, eating in a restaurant, and the most nutrient-dense and delicious food you're eating just happens to be made from food waste. What if all the byproducts in the world could be not byproducts, but actually have a second life as a food source for humans, for animals, as a substrate for biomanufacturing of chemicals and materials? I think this is a massive opportunity and a moonshot, converting byproducts into value-added products. To solve the global challenge of food waste, it's going to require a lot of different perspectives at the table. It doesn't really matter where you come from because there's a lot of technology that needs to be invented. Understanding what's in food waste, how do we valorize it, how do we minimize it, but also policy. How do we create incentives to waste less? How do we make that profitable? We need to understand the actual sustainability impacts of different solutions, life cycle analysis, techno-economics. So everybody has a perspective to bring, from the very molecular to the kind of global policy perspective. And I think we all have to come together to fix this issue. This is not just a sustainability issue, it's also an economic opportunity. Food waste in the US alone is about 38% of all food that's produced is actually wasted. And this amounts to a few percentage points of our GDP, about $1 trillion in losses every year. The economic opportunity is vast. Imagine if that could be turned into profitable solutions. We would not only minimize waste, but there's a huge opportunity waiting on the other side.